What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest is an architect, innovator, and culture advocate. She's passionate about the design of communities, spaces, and experiences that connect people. She creates places that inspire interaction and enrich social experiences. She's a principal and the managing director of the New York office at Cooper Carry. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Lopatynsky. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I'm excited to chat with you this afternoon.
I got your last name right.
You are spot on.
Well, I'm just really honored, as with all my guests, to just have your time here and hear a little bit about you. I know that, we've been at many of the events at the same time. We run in the same circles. And as an architect, I'm really curious to get because there's back and forth between designers, architects, designers. Sometimes there's a grand alignment. Sometimes there's, these Venn diagrams. But like wearing that hat as a principal and managing director at Cooper Carry and being an architect, how do you define hospitality?
So Dan, I love that question, because for me, yes, I am an architect and a designer. I think they're one and the same, honestly. But hospitality is less about, in my mind, the physical place, but it's the emotional feeling you experience from entering it, right? It is that, warm hug you get when you walk into a small boutique space, hotel. It is the great feeling you have having an intimate dinner with a bunch of friends in a small restaurant with great wine and company. It's the welcome that you get walking into a reception area in an office building, right? Or a office floor. Does it make you feel like you should be there, or does it make you feel like you're a stranger there, right? So that the design does emote or evoke the feeling in my mind.
And I think one of the things that, again, without having that black and white definition of what hospitality is, one of the things that comes up repeatedly is this idea of warmth and feeling, which is kind of really hard to get a binary definition. It's kind of like you know it when you see it, or not even see it. You know it when you feel it.
It's that for sure. And we all feel it differently, right? Because we use our personal past experiences to define what warmth is, right? We may tie it back to our childhood experiences, right? What is warmth? What did warmth mean to you as a kid? And you use that feeling as you mature and grow older. Some of us may use experiences from our early adult years as defining warmth. Some of it may be, that personal interaction with the human beings in the space, right? It's, I think when we were prepping for this, I had mentioned a friend of ours who had a restaurant in the city, tiny little shoebox of a restaurant called Graffiti. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore, but Jehangir Mehta, who was the chef restaurateur, could only fit about 20 people in this restaurant, and the kitchen was like a closet in the back of the restaurant, and he cooked everything on a hot plate. And you always
literally a hot plate.
Oh wow. Literally a hot plate, or multiple hot plates. And the food was incredible. Highly rated, Zaga rated restaurant. He had a great following at the time. But where I'm going with this is that even though it was a small space and minimally designed, it was probably the best example of hospitality, because the people who worked there welcomed you like you were being welcomed into somebody's home. They sat you down into these intimate spaces for groups of 4 or 6 or even 2. And the fact that you were so close to the kitchen, and you knew how he was preparing the food, when you ate and drank, you knew that it was, kind of as if you were sitting in somebody else's kitchen and getting served dinner. So that experience and feeling of hospitality, doesn't have to be a luxury hotel and a resort. And by the way, that is hospitality too. But I think it comes in all scales is where I'm going with, so that you can get that feeling of being welcomed.
So one of the things that I've been intrigued about in speaking with, I guess, like they would be colleagues at yours, but at larger architectural firms, where how many offices do you have now?
We are currently 3 offices, but
And where are they?
they're in Atlanta. We're headquartered in Atlanta, DC, and New York. We have
Okay.
over 350 employees, so we're not a small firm, but
No, I
we're
would
not.
say I would say that's on the bigger side. And especially when before we spoke, I was looking at all the different studios you have amongst those 3 offices. And it's everything from graphic design to interior design to hospitality to government to science and technology to transit and urban design and planning. I mean, it's this vast multidisciplinary firm where everyone's doing different things. And I'm curious, with you as focusing on the hospitality side, do you bring a lot of how do you convey, or are you ever asked to convey that feeling of warmth that you feel hospitality is into those other channels where like science and tech, like maybe not? I don't know if I would consider that, but like I'm really curious how you weave that feeling of warmth into all of your studios.
It's a great question, and we do it all the time. And I'll say that we start from the premise that Cooper Carry works in what we call a mixed-use ecosystem. So at the core of it, of what we do, is the disciplines we design in, whether it's architecture and interiors or graphics or branding or landscape architecture. But what surrounds it are all these studios you just described, and we influence each other, right? And so we have worked on workplace projects where we are influencing the design of that workplace through hospitality principles and creating these moments and areas of warmth and communication and gathering, right? We do it in our multifamily projects as well. So I would say, yes, I work in the hospitality studio, but I also get to work in all these other studios as well, and I'm able to bring those concepts to the thinking around planting the seeds in our early stages of design. And we see it in the industry too. I mean, hospitality has absolutely influenced all the different spaces we occupy.
I completely agree. And I think that's why this podcast has become something more than just a little hobby that I did, because I do believe hospitality is not limited, obviously not limited to hotels, but it touches everything.
Yeah.
So I think we can all learn from it. And again, it's like, why not make others feel warm and heard and seen? It's like,
of course.
Yeah.
I mean, even think about like educational projects, right? Schools for children. Why wouldn't you want to create environments, even on the outside, where these students can gather and be together and feel safe and feel welcomed, or feel part of something, instead of being in a box where they're facing one direction in a classroom. I think it's here to stay, and let's put it that way, where hospitality influences everything we do.
It is. And I think, going back to the introduction that I read out, I described you as a culture advocate, an advocate of culture, or something like that.
Yeah.
When you think about culture and hospitality, how do you advocate for hospitality, or how do you define yourself as a culture advocate within Cooper Carry and anything further at large? Like, I'd love to dig into that, like how you define culture and like how you're advocating for it.
Sure. Thank you for that question, because I would say first and foremost, I am a people person. I love to be around people. I love to listen. I love to engage with folks. And that's a component of hospitality, if you will, right? But it is who I am as well. It's my upbringing, it's my education, it's my luck of my professional experience and being and working with individuals who really value that social interaction as a mechanism for success in everything we do, whether it's designing a space or engaging with a client or talking about Cooper Carry. Culture, the way I see it related to hospitality, is that human piece. And what I do, and have done my pretty much my whole career, I would say, but certainly at Cooper Carry, is make sure that we're all kind of talking to each other and building bridges to learn from each other. Communication is a big part of that. And so I'm sure that any Cooper Carrian that's listening to this, who knows me, will nod their heads when I say I like to bring people together and make sure everybody's talking to each other, right? And I mean literally talking to each other, because I think that is the best form of communication and building culture. And I'm not putting down technology; it's part of our life, but a phone conversation or a video conversation, when you can hear people's intonation of voice, that sends a message, a feeling of connectivity. And that's part of culture, right? Being connected to each other, working together in an environment that makes you happy.
And then I can imagine like everyone kind of went distributed and remote, and now people are starting to come back together. As you think about, I don't think we've really figured out what that balance is yet. It's still like that marketplace of ideas is still trying to self-determine itself.
Yeah.
As an architect and designer, and also principal at a firm with 350 people, how are you bridging that gap, or how are you guys thinking about that between internally within your offices and your office, and also on the projects that you're working in?
Yeah, I mean, it's you're right. We have not figured this out yet. We're still, everyone in the globally. Where are we going to land with it? I don't think anybody really knows yet. But at the core of all this is, I mean, certainly my belief is that our best work and our best collaboration is done in person. Does it have to be in person all the time, every day of the week? No. But striking the right balance of when that happens, I think, is really individual. Not as an individual, as a person, but individual to the team and the project and the schedule. So, I'm speaking about architecture, right, and design only. I would imagine there's probably some really good data out there that supports what I'm saying. And that collaboration is best done in person. We at Cooper Carry have a hybrid flexible work model coming out of the pandemic. And the way we make it work in New York really is all about communication. Again,
That word keeps coming up.
It really does. It's the special sauce. Because if you don't tell somebody, or if you don't get an idea across in a way that the person receiving it fully understands it, you're not communicating. And so we use all kinds of communication. We use Teams and chats and emails and phone calls. We have some requirements around when we want folks in the office, and it's office based, but it's also project based, because we have project deadlines, and sometimes we need everybody in the office multiple days in a row. Does that happen every week? No, but when we ask, people respond, I would say, generally in a very positive way. And I think, although people don't tell me this, I think people are happy with the direction we've laid out. So that's how we manage it.
Awesome. So shifting back, I want to get back into that feeling of warmth. And I guess, you know, how everyone brings it from all different areas, from their childhood, their different upbringings,
Yeah.
their life experience. Can you walk us through a project that you may have worked on at any point in your journey,
Yeah.
or your career, that is just a really good, or maybe one of your favorite? I know all of your projects you love equally, but is there anything that really exemplifies that conveyance of warmth and community that you could kind of talk us through?
Sure. There is a project. I worked on this maybe 6, 7 years ago. So it was prior to me joining Cooper Carey, but it is something that I bring to every project I work on now. The client was a nonprofit that was looking to build a business model around co-working, hospitality, and childcare. And we got to work on the pilot program for it. And one of the most interesting things about this project was uh, balancing the ethos of this nonprofit with the business requirements that they had, all through the lens of hospitality, right? So it was the business was co-working and childcare, and what linked it together was hospitality. There were cafes and restaurants that were tied to it, but the underlying theme was all about creating a place that the community users of this, for lack of a better word, mixed use hospitality place, felt welcome, felt embraced, felt like they were, this was part of their community, because that was the feeling that the nonprofit wanted. It was in their ethos, and they wanted to have that in their business model for these locations across the country. So to me, that was the most rewarding of all the projects I've worked on to date, because of that, because of being able to translate that for
It's
them.
amazing how I appreciate that so much. And just, it's amazing how in all of these conversations that I'm having, these themes come up. And just, I think it was maybe the last one, or I had a conversation with Stephanie Hopkins from Marriott, and she was talking about an entrepreneur that inspires her. And she figured out this way to, I forget the woman's name, but it was co-working and childcare. And when we were saying, or you were saying before, not we, it was all you, we haven't really figured it out yet. I'm actually intrigued and curious that why this childcare and co-working thing hasn't really taken off a bit more, because in this hybrid world, like, why aren't we doing that? I know I was at the Marriott headquarters, they just built this new one, and they actually put in childcare on the second or fourth floor, I forget.
Yeah.
And to me, I remember when my dad, he had this, he had a factory in New Jersey when I was growing up. And I remember he wanted to, for many of the women that worked there, he wanted to have childcare for them so that they could come and work, and the kids were cared for, because it's expensive and they didn't really know how to make it work.
Yeah.
But the bureaucracy of, and the cost of dealing with the state of New Jersey and trying to make this happen, there was such a tremendous barrier to entry. And as an architect, I'm sure you're dealing, with so many laws and ordinances, and is there a way to kind of break through that? Because to me, I think that also helps solve an employment challenge that we're having currently in the United States, and probably globally as well.
You'd think we could make this simpler and easier to make happen. And I'm sure we could, but the regulatory aspect of childcare, at least from the experience I had in doing this project, first of all, differs from state to state. And in some states, it's more, regulated to the point where, they basically prescribe the box for you, right? There's no design involved.
Mhm.
And you have to layer on those regulatory requirements on top of codes and local zoning requirements. So it gets complicated to make it happen. Now, there's always a solution. There's always a way to figure it out. And I would imagine that some really smart people could get into a room together to do that, because I agree with you. This should be something we could easily solve for the current, challenge we have in getting folks to be in the office and manage their lives outside of the office, right? Childcare is a big deal. It's
Yeah.
incredibly expensive. It's hard to find one that can cover, your day the way you need it to. And those employers who do provide it for their employees, I think that's a phenomenal thing.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking just of, the square footage footprints that so many large corporations have that, they've had leased out since before the pandemic. And like, as they start to reevaluate people coming back to work,
Yeah.
They're not going to need as much space because they'll probably be able to stagger
Yeah.
who's there. But
Yeah.
if they have all this extra space, I'm like, why not allocate some of that to childcare? To me, it just seems like a no-brainer. And I'm sure there's a lot of different ideas in there, but I think it
Well,
would just help so much from a macro sense.
yeah, you have to think it's similar to kind of school design, right? You have to think about outdoor play area. You have to think
Mm.
about certainly also the ages that you are covering there, infants versus toddlers versus, after school care. You have different requirements in terms of space for that. So it's not necessarily, oh, we've got this, half a floor plate, let's turn it into childcare. You have to think about all of the additional programmatic spaces that you need, and as well as security, right? You have to think about
Totally.
that. And I would imagine a lot of employers who have office space don't have anybody internally that could manage that for them, right? Or even knows how to manage that for them. So, thinking about, do you outsource that, and how do you outsource that? And, there's,
Mm.
like I said, I am sure there's an answer out there to make it happen. There are employers that have done this, but they tend to be larger employers who have the opportunity to carve out that space to provide for their
Yeah.
employees.
And again, it kind of ties back to where you said we haven't figured it out yet. I feel like that has to be a component into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to shift gears a little bit into, your career arc, as a principal and managing director of the New York City office for Cooper Carey. That's amazing. And I'm a firm believer that we all stand on the shoulders of those before us. So if you think about how you described hospitality and this idea of warmth and communication and coming together, is there any mentor or inspiration along your career journey that exemplified that the best, that you kind of moved on or has taken with you and paid it forward, so to speak?
I've had some amazing mentors. I'm one of those very lucky people, I think. They were all males in this profession because there weren't women in leadership roles. I've had two or three that have really impacted my trajectory in my career, but I would say my biggest mentor is my dad.
Oh,
My father's a civil engineer. My mom's an artist, so imagine that, engineer, artist,
me too.
influencing an architect, right? But my dad, it was less about his professional experience, but more what was in his DNA around leadership, which really, I think, influenced me the most. And that DNA around leadership came from his experience and my experience. We're Ukrainian American. I was born here. My folks came here as refugees after the Second World War. And my dad's family come from a line of Ukrainian scouts who established scouting, actually were part of establishing scouting in Ukraine back in 1918 or 1912, I should say. And the attributes of scouting, right, and leadership and setting kind of the right tone around working within your community. We lived and breathed it growing up in my family, but we were also members of Ukrainian scouting. Happened to be a member of the New York troop, but those
Like your Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts scouting.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but in Ukrainian.
Wow.
Yes. So I think those elements of scouting and leadership and mentorship and, the idea of doing it together and always being surrounded by those influencers, and my dad really being the one, never pushing us into it, but just talking about it. And it was always, over here on this side of my head, to this day. So when I work with folks, and I've done this numerous times, I think sometimes about, well, what would my dad do in this situation, right? How would he handle it? So I do believe that my attitude towards building community within Cooper Carry or within my teams or how I mentor others does come from my dad's influence and mentorship on me.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I got
And were
lucky.
you a Girl Scout?
I still am, by the way.
No way.
I am.
Oh my
I
God.
am. Yeah, I am.
That's amazing.
My kids are
Thin Mints are my favorite.
Well, I'm not an American Girl Scout. I'm a Ukrainian Girl Scout. So we don't do cookies.
Oh,
But, we do other fun stuff.
wow, that's amazing. So you're a Ukrainian Girl Scout.
I am. Yeah.
Wow.
The organization is called PLAST, P-L-A-S-T. And we've got in the North American diaspora between the US and Canada, we've got lots of locations. And we're going on third generations of Ukrainian Americans being part of this.
Okay, so then the elephant in the room then is, with all the insanity going on in Ukraine right now, what are some of the largest initiatives that PLAST is taking on right now in North America?
Yeah, since the war escalated in February 22, PLAST has been integral in supporting through fundraising for humanitarian aid, for the refugees coming here. Individuals are contributing on an individual basis, but the organization is also, fundraising and doing all kinds of things, getting medical supplies over. In the beginning, there were a lot of troops that were putting together first aid kits, right? They were packing stuff up, sending it to Ukraine for immediate use, clothes, food, diapers, very, very active. And of course, there's Ukrainian scouts in Ukraine who have volunteered to fight on the front, right? Both men and women. And my personal sorority group and older scouts belong to sororities and fraternities. We do actually have some members of our sorority who are actively fighting, and these are women and who are mothers who are fighting on the front.
It's so interesting. I'm actually looking on my computer right now because through this podcast, I think it was literally just today. I don't know how to find it. I got a woman from Ukraine reached out. She's in the hospitality industry, and wow. And I was thinking, wow, she must be experiencing some incredible stuff right now.
It's intense. Yeah. I mean, this is
and then I was also like, how is she accessing? I guess that's all that Starlink stuff, right? They're not fully cut off, right?
Yes, they're not fully cut off. They are very connected. It's horrific what is happening on that end. On the other side, they are very connected and very Western in everything, they're, let's not discount their connection to Europe and the rest of the world for the last 30 years since Ukraine gained its independence from the Soviet Empire. But people are moving on. People are living their lives. People aren't stopping and saying, why they're saying, why is this happening to me? But what am I going to do once this war is over in rebuilding Ukraine? And that's happening through the diaspora around the world. And it's certainly something as an individual I'm thinking about, but we've also, as a firm, want to, we're looking at ways that we can help rebuild, whether it's going in and helping replan something or provide some temporary shelter ideas, or when the war finally ends and we are actually building buildings again, how can Cooper Carry contribute to that? I know I hope others are feeling the same way, because there's going to be a lot of rebuilding that's going to happen after this is over.
From an order of magnitude as it relates to Plast, like, is there a number that has been fundraised, or an amount of aid that's been brought over to Ukraine?
You know what?
Sent over?
I am sure there is. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. We could probably, Google it.
Plus, I can imagine, like, if you think about the supply lines in any war, like, that's really the most critical thing. And it seems that with Ukraine, like, there are so many Ukrainians in North America.
So many.
And they're all they've all, well, I don't want to make sweeping generalizations, but I'm sure many of them have done very well. And I'm sure many of them are sending over a tremendous amount of money and material.
Yes. There are very.
I just found out. I'm sorry, I just found her name. Her name's like Yulia Cosenco, and she's with this Ukrainian hotel group called Ribas, Ribas. So I'm
writing it down.
Yeah, I'm gonna send her a copy of this. And just kind of redirect her here. Yeah, absolutely. This would be amazing.
Do you know where she's from? Does it say?
I'm not. Let's see if I look there. Sorry, guys. I normally try not to look at my computer when I'm doing these.
Sorry. Probably should talk about this afterwards.
Oh no, this is timely and and pretty exciting. So
I just want to, I want to make sure that we are identifying. There are lots of nonprofits in North America that are part of fundraising. It's not just Plast.
I'm sure, but
and there are some very generous Ukrainian Americans who have really leaned in and generous with their money, but also with their time. It's one of those things that how can you not participate in some way to be part of the support for this country that is fighting for the rest of the world, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of it is written in Cyrillic, and I'm not good at that, so I couldn't tell you.
We'll
have to do it later.
Send it to me. I'll read it.
I got to brush up on it. I can barely read English, so or like the English alphabet. So anyway, okay, so that's really amazing on your dad and his DNA and that whole idea of leadership. If you were to think about on your career path, and I know that a lot of what our parents say to us, we always take with us into every arena, but who on your career path would have made you feel that warmth, or teach or show you a way or a technique to express that warmth, either within a company or on a project that you're working on?
Yeah, so I would say my first boss. I was lucky enough to work for a very small firm in New York. At the time when I was still in college, when still in architecture school, I went to Pratt, for those of you who are curious. So I got to do this. I had a summer internship with this small firm, and one of the partners there was a family friend. So, again, connections through my dad, but the way that the partners ran the firm was through this very open communication, took me under their wing, and I believe gave me the opportunity to see every facet of the profession and what it took. and so worked there as a summer intern, graduated, worked there as a, emerging architect, and got to do everything at a very young age, and got to experience and get exposure to everything. And the way that happened really was that warm embrace, figuratively, of my mentor, showing me the way, taking me places, including me in things, having conversations with me about it. And it really set the tone of how one should behave as you interact with people.
And what was his name?
George Sawiki. The firm was at the time was Greenfield Sawiki Tarella. I think it's now just Sawiki Tarella these days.
Got
it. And George is retired now, but I do get to see him every once in a while. But he I believe, put me on a platform that I could make a really big leap in my next career jump, because of the exposure he had given me. I'm sure if he's listening to this, he'd say, "Why didn't you stick around?" But
he'll send you a thank you card.
I am sure
for giving him a shout out.
I'm sure.
Then that also goes back to the idea of how this whole workplace thing hasn't figured itself out, right? Because here George is kind of, I think you said, taking you under his wing, and kind of showing you that the gray areas of how we do things, right? It's all those things that you kind of have to show you. It's not like you're learning it out of a process manual, right?
100%.
And then with all the communication and culture that you're talking about, Cooper Carey and your team or the company at large, what are ways that you're kind of cutting through this hybrid workplace so that you're able to pay what George showed you forward?
Yeah. Well, I encourage my folks to come into the office more than the 3 days a week that we have as our policy. And, I think it is a show and tell experience. I would hope that some of the folks that work with me see the value of being in the office when we're all there. And it's not just me taking certain people places. It's also just listening to the conversations I'm having with others, right? Overhearing conversations. I mean, we have an open office environment, so everybody hears everybody's conversation. So I do believe some of the younger talent that I'm surrounded by does see the value in it and are starting to see, you know what, maybe if I'm in the office more, I will connect with Alex more, and maybe I'll have an opportunity to go site visit with Alex, client meeting with Alex, networking with Alex, right? And spread the word to those who aren't necessarily doing that, right? I mean, obviously I can't be everywhere and I don't want to be everywhere, but but if I can get 3 or 4 people to start doing what I'm doing, that just exponentially pushes out that idea of mentoring and growth and warmth about and how we get to be better at what we do.
Totally. And it's actually interesting. I was just talking to someone the other day. So people who reach out, like I get a lot of feedback on the podcast, or I should say we, because it takes a village. But one little channel of feedback is, I'm going to call them kids, but it's like students who are at Pratt or other universities. I think University of Cincinnati, or is it Cornell?
Yeah.
Where are the other one? Like a couple from, oh my gosh, War Eagle, Auburn, like all these people who have these like kind of cool hospitality and design overlay things going on.
Yeah.
And also interns who are just starting out, or people, because I think that one of the roles that this podcast is serving is, it's that water cooler talk that's kind of missing, or waiting in line. I don't know if people wait in line for copies anymore, but like
I
it's
do.
that walking past each other,
Yeah.
using the fax machine. Just kidding. But
Oh,
people are like, oh wow, thanks. This is really cool. It gave me some new perspective, or I was intrigued by hospitality design. Um, and I think that it's kind of filling a void that's been left in this hybrid.
yes. This part of interaction outside of, at least for us, project work is still part of the profession, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it to learn everything about architecture takes a really, really long time. It's not, you don't graduate from architecture school and you're baked.
Mhm.
You're just getting started. And you can learn to put a building together or learn to create a space, but there's so much more to the practice of architecture, and those other bits, to your point, filling in those gaps, it is this human interaction piece. It is
Mhm.
being together. um and yes, I do remember fax machines. Oh, by the way.
Yes. I love fax machines.
Yeah.
Or a telex machine. So
Oh, that too.
yeah. So as look, we just did a little journey, like looking back over your career,
Mm.
Girl Scout, school, first mentor, now a leader in a big company. Um, as you look forward, what's exciting you most about the future?
I have to tell you, I'm so excited about seeing, at least in my profession, more women entering it and stepping in as leaders, and not just like a trickle, but big numbers. And it's not just women, but diverse members of our society entering the profession and influencing different ways to
Mm,
figure things out, bringing other ways of solving problems to the equation, bringing their personal experiences that can be so varied to solving the problems. That I am thrilled about that, and I'm excited to see that growth happen. I'm an optimistic person, generally
mhm,
speaking, so I always like to see the bright side of things, and so I want to make sure that in order for these women to stay in this profession, I want to make sure we influence the the place that um, sets them up for success, so that they
mm.
can pursue their career and do other things that had stopped women in staying in the profession in the past.
Yeah.
Most of it was
Um,
child rearing, and
yeah.
things
Well,
like that.
it's that co-working
Yep.
childcare thing,
Yep.
which I'm sure is a mosaic, like a mosaic in the overall solution, not like it's a part of it, and it just needs to be figured out. And as you're saying that, I'm also thinking, you look at some countries where women or other members of society are subjugated or not allowed to enter the workforce or
Hmm.
whatever, or just, they're just kind of pushed off to the sides.
Yep.
It's really, obviously, in my opinion, terrible, but it's also so limiting, because your
Right.
intelligence, I guess, like intelligence and skill and um, just brain power is distributed evenly across all people,
Yeah.
all sexes.
Yeah.
And when you're subjugating or limiting those people from entering or being a part of it, you're leaving half or more of your potential on the table, or not even on the table, like
It's not
wherever.
even getting
And
to the table.
yeah, it's not even getting to the table, and
Yeah.
it blows my mind. And then, to hear you say what's exciting you about the future is having all these women and other people entering the workforce in droves, as far as like architects, right? Because you originally said when you started it was all males.
Well, it was mostly males.
Mostly,
Wasn't
yeah, but
wasn't it wasn't all
90
males.
plus, 90 plus.
Yeah, I would suppose. I will say, I graduated in a
Mhm.
class, I think we had 40 students graduating. We started 200. I think we ended up
Mhm.
at 40 after 5 years. We maybe had 15 women. So that's not a big number, but it was a pretty decent number. I would
Mhm.
say out of that percentage when we graduated to today, perhaps 5 of us are still practicing. That's a, I mean, that's a big loss, I think.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose that population. And to just close out the idea of not getting those diverse ideas at the table, that stifles innovation, right? And so do you really want to be in a place where you're going to limit your ability to innovate because you're not bringing diverse ideas to the table? And diverse
Yeah.
ideas come from people who have different experiences and solve problems differently. And being different doesn't mean that it's bad. It's
Totally.
just different.
Well, and that's what I was trying to say. I couldn't think of the word, but talent, that's it. Talent
Yeah.
is uniformly distributed.
Yeah.
Opportunity is not,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, and it's also interesting. I just got feedback on this. I don't know. Someone was looking back at all the past guests, and I don't know. I forget who it was, but they were like, "Oh my gosh, I love that all of the guests that you have on, and there's so many women." And I'm like, "Oh wow, I didn't even think about that." But if you think about it, that's pretty awesome.
That is
And
pretty awesome.
I'm glad to be a part of it. Thanks for inviting me along
Yeah.
for the ride.
I should say the same to you. Thank you for inviting us. Now, I would say, it's interesting. Um, there are enough studies out there that have been done that diverse, at least in design, diverse design ideas create better solutions. So there's data to support this. This isn't somebody sort of just saying, muscling their way in. There's logical, factual data that says
Totally. And
bring
to me,
ideas.
I think design, I think the definition should be kind of modified to be really just problem solving.
It's
So like
exactly what we
whether
do.
you're designing graphics, a building, legislation, a paper, like you're writing an essay, a book, you're really designing everything. It's refinement, and it's thinking, it's getting all the ideas out, and then like it's solving the problem of how do you find that correct solution or the best possible solution. And I'm also surprised that this idea of design as a problem solving method is not taught to kids. Like you can learn fine art, you can learn how to write a paper, you can learn how to do math problems, but they're not really calling it design. It's not. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a way to bring that all together to really just be designing our lives.
Yes. I
Mm.
mean, everything we do, we design it, right? And it is the problem solving aspects of, it's not just architecture or interiors or
Mm.
graphics or branding. It's IT, it's,
Yeah,
car design. I don't know.
it's
It's a lot.
everything.
It's everything. Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to go into like the little time machine question I love asking people. Um, when did you join? When did you first become a Girl Scout?
Oh gosh. I think I was 6 or 7.
Okay, so I want you to go. The Alex I'm talking to now. I want you to go into a time machine back to your 6 or 7 year old self,
Yeah.
and I want you to give yourself some advice. What would that be?
Be more courageous.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, that's really it. Don't worry about what other people think. You know
Mm.
what you need to do. Go do it.
And how do you take that idea of being courageous and kind of teach that to others so as to shorten their journeys to being more
I say it
courageous?
all the time, Dan. I say it all the time. Every conversation I have with somebody who, is trying to solve for something or is stuck, over analyzing something, right? And I stop them and I say, you got this, go do it. have the courage to do it. You may not have all the answers, but you can figure it out later. But be confident in what you're doing.
I love it.
And it's really, I wish I had learned that a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, inertia can be the mind killer, you know?
Yeah. And I also think that, I have two kids. I have a daughter and a son, and my daughter, I think, is naturally courageous, but, through society and, exposure, girls tend to lose that courage at a certain point in their lives. And, sometimes it comes back and sometimes it doesn't. And I talk to my daughter about this all the time. She'll overanalyze, but she has an inherent quality about courage, which I'm so impressed with. I wish I had that. So, but still, even telling her, you got this, it, you got this, go do it. I wish I had people telling me that when I was 25. Maybe they did, but I wasn't listening.
Mm-hmm. I think we could all use a little bit more courage and get out of our cowardly lion suits, right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I got to rewatch The Wizard of Oz. Alex, I've appreciated this time with you so much. How can people learn more about you or Cooper Carry? What's a good way for them to make that happen?
Dan, likewise, I appreciated the time you took to chat with me. The best way is to visit our website at www.coopercarry.com, and Cooper is with a C and Carry is with a C. And you can find me on the website under leadership. You could also look me up on LinkedIn. And Dan, I don't know if you're going to be sharing any of my email address or any of the information in your podcast, but
no, I think I'll just leave it like that. Well,
got it.
Some people like their email address, but I think you probably get your inbox is probably not empty right now.
I get a lot of
So we'll save you there. LinkedIn is the good way.
LinkedIn is a good way. Absolutely.
So, but Alex, again, and I'm gonna connect you with that woman from Ukraine.
With Yulia? Yeah.
With Yulia, thank you. See, it already left me.
That's all right.
I'll do that right after this. But again, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. And thank you for your courage for being on here.
Thank you. And thank you for having courage to talk to me.
Yes. Oh, that's not a problem. I'm honored. And also, I just want to thank all of our guests I want to thank all of our listeners. There we go. Because again, we keep growing every single week. And without you, I probably wouldn't be doing this anymore, because I feel like I've struck a nerve and it's just really awesome. So thank you. And if this has changed your idea on how you give or receive hospitality or design it, please share it. We're all word of mouth. And thank you.